Well, I was first introduced to the concept that it might be better through my mentor, Charles Poliquin, because he would always talk about how you're wasting your time if you're doing hours of cardio, if your goal is fat loss or hormone balance or things like this. And being that I had a little bit of sprinting background in college, I took it back up again. My daughter inspired me to start sprinting again. And so I started doing the research on why is this working better and why is it working for my clients and people I know, especially women over 40. And what I discovered is that your brain increases BDNF for one thing, so brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and that in turn, the catecholamines that are released help you burn fat long after you're done running, whereas opposed to when you're doing slow distance, that's pretty much it. You're not really burning as much fat.
BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, is a neuropeptide that is critical for axonal growth, neuronal survival, and synaptic plasticity. Scientists have found this to be the most outstanding neurotropic factor of all.
So I'm proposing, how about spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes instead of an hour of running, and sprinting will absolutely do it. It's one of the things that will, get you really lean and without a lot of time commitment. This is a problem in society today where people are very distracted and they do want to check out and maybe listen to something or they're multitasking by listening to an audiobook, but that's not the time. The time that they take to exercise should be the time to focus on building their body into a stronger person. So you have a lot of running injuries, Achilles, knees, all kinds of things, shin splints, with long, slow distance as well. Because they just think it's easy, I'll just go start running. And that's really not the proper way either. I think it's just a trend, that's a mentality that's happened where, okay, I run long distance and I eat lots of carbohydrates. And we have found these days that actually the opposite is better for you, according to the science. The science backs it up.
Right.
And according to just our own daily experiences with my athletes, probably your clients as well, and that it just works. A lot of joint pain we know comes from diet and not necessarily from overuse injuries, which tend to happen more in endurance training. So the inflammation that is coming from the diet will present itself. Bacteria actually escape and go through the bloodstream and settle in our joints. So they find the inflamed tissue. So say you did overuse your knees. You have inflamed tissue there. These bacteria will go and swim and live there and inflame them even more. Like it creates a cascading effect. So cleaning up the diet is the first thing to getting strong enough to do any kind of exercise. But with sprinting, you're right, you're not using it as much. You have a shorter time period. So you have different types of loads that keep you from overusing your joints. So yes, better for your joints. And there are various ways to sprint. So you could be sprinting on grass first or the beach like we did today. Way better for our joints.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and more resistance for a shorter amount of time. And we still got a very cardiovascular benefit of it.
Totally.
We got into the lactic zone, which was the purpose of today, was to remain explosive, get some cardio, some breath going, and then also get into the lactic zone, which is the best way to stimulate growth hormone and the best way to burn fat. People are afraid, I'm going to pull a hamstring. So the best way to start is to start strength training, and you can start doing that with dumbbells. You can do it with body weight to start. I really am a big fan of not staying in the body weight category for too long and having resistance training. So you can do a really easy dumbbell workout to strengthen the muscles that you're going to need for sprinting. And then you can progress to maybe start walking up a hill because that forces your toe to dorsiflex, which is the proper sprinting form. Your toe is up then. And so you're walking up the hill maybe for a couple of weeks. It depends on your level. The main point is to just try to remain explosive as long as you can. And so I do give suggestions in my book. I suggest that, for instance, for hills, if you walk up a hill for about 2 minutes and 45 seconds, then walk back down, then that can be your starting points, and just see how much faster you can get every week, starting out with walking, then maybe jogging, and then getting faster and faster as time goes on. Any longer than that, you might start getting into the endurance zone. You can absolutely go shorter. I am a 400-meter sprinter, so I'm on all three energy systems, but I definitely get into the lactic zone, which is awesome. But there are plenty of sprinters who just do 30 meters, 40 meters, and when you want to do that, if you want to be a short sprinter, then you can just get on a field to start with and run for, say, 20 seconds and then walk back and do that several times. You can run a little bit shorter as you get faster. So it just, you can vary, but you don't need fancy equipment. If we were to do that, we're a little bit more experienced. We've been running. We would go at we'd start at maybe 70% or 80% for the first couple, make sure we're really warmed up. Of course, I would have you do a long 10-minute dynamic warm up first, but then we would get into this, accelerate a little bit, and then we would go for maybe like 80 to 90%. Sprinters don't often go 100%. There's different ways of thinking about this, but you go 100% on race day, but if you can, it's almost like the 1 rep max.
Right.
You're not doing that every time you work out.
Totally.
Same thing with sprinting. You don't have to go 100% every time. You can go several times in the 90% range. Just be mindful of having really great running shoes so that your shins are supported, and compression socks are fantastic for supporting your shins and as well sending blood back up to your heart faster. Mainly if you just strengthen those muscles through strength training, you're going to have a pretty easy time increasing your speed as you go. Again, you're not just going out and running 100% today out of the blue. You're starting slow and building up your speed a little bit more and a little bit more. And people have just found tremendous results from doing that, like going a little bit faster than they thought they could go.
Yeah.
And then there's this psychological benefit where they're like, I'm so proud of myself. I can't believe I just did that. Anyone can do this. I mean, to your ability, of course, but it doesn't take someone. People always assume that I was some world-class runner in college or something like that. Yeah, I had some experience, but I do believe that anyone can start wherever they are. You are going to get more of a stretch in your calves and your Achilles, but again, like by gradually building up the speed, it's just going to strengthen those muscles over time. Now, Achilles is one of my specialties that I deal with because I deal with so many runners and my clients. I work with a lot of Olympian runners. And what I've found is actually there was a really interesting study that came out that identified spontaneous Achilles ruptures had staph infections.
Wow.
And they took muscle biopsies from the hamstrings of the same individuals and there was no staph. So what was happening is possibly that this staph bacteria was, again, attracted to the inflamed tissue and living there. And I have found that there are certain things dietary-wise that you can intake that really mitigates the Achilles pain. Like, so I've been able to metabolically reverse Achilles tendonitis in 2 weeks.
Whoa.
Sometimes longer.
Yeah.
And with no other training or rehabilitation. I'm not saying this is like the perfect solution for everyone, but it's definitely an option. And that involved eliminating sugar. So maybe like less than 8 grams a day from whatever sources. 8 grams or less, definitely eliminating grains, eliminating dairy, and introducing coconut oil. So, because the coconut oil has monolaurin, the lauric acid, and monolaurin is also found in breast milk. So I always joke around, hey, if you don't have any breast milk handy, then just go with the coconut oil.
Nice.
But so this is one of the few things that kills resistant staph.
Interesting.
So they just take shots of coconut oil or mix it into their protein shakes, and within 2 weeks, that Achilles tendonitis is gone. But he would say like it's a different bacteria in your elbow. If you have elbow, like tennis elbow or elbow pain, it's usually Blastocystis hominis. So it's a different bacteria for different joints, which is really interesting as well. I think there's a lot of work to be done in that area where the scientists they've just barely started looking into it. I'm just an average mom. I was probably 20 pounds overweight after my last child, which I advise to anyone who's breastfeeding, don't try to lose weight. You need it to feed your child. So that's not the time to do it. But when you're done breastfeeding, if you want to get fit again, then start making choices. Like I really try to empower people to make choices. It's all up to them. They can do that. They can They can push their body to become a superhero themselves, their own superhero.
If an average person looked at your Instagram, they might be like, oh, well, she probably doesn't have kids. All she does is work out all day and things like that. But you just started rerunning, so to speak, what, like 6, 7 years ago?
4 years ago.
4 years ago?
Yeah, and it took me 2 years to become a world champion.
That is so amazing.
Yeah.
And you were matching or beating your college times?
Oh, last year in my world championship win, I ran faster than I did in college, which should not be happening.
That is so amazing. At 44.
Right, yes. My coach came from Legend of Clyde Hart, who coached Michael Johnson.
Wow.
So I had a fantastic experience. I got faster from high school to college, so I was putting in the work.
Hey, before I do a big event, while my competitors are drinking Gatorade and Powerade and oatmeal and whatever else, you're having ribeye with maybe some raspberry.
I do cycle carnivore a couple times a year just because it feels like it's almost like a detoxification, but I don't stay there in that zone for most of my year. But I do stay animal protein based, and I am a huge fan of red meat. And I get my blood work done every year. My doctor continues to say, this is the most impressive blood work I've ever seen in my life. And especially because I'm always throwing in extra tests, like tests, B12, test zinc, test this, so it's not the standard blood work. And he said, throwing the net this far, I've never seen anyone come back with such great results in all of these categories. So, I really am a proponent that red meat can be healthy for you, and that it is almost necessary as we age, and almost necessary for women, especially over 40, because I really feel like the B12, the folate, all of the really great, the iron, the zinc, it just is the perfect package for hormone balance. And that is a really big issue for women, especially over 40, really anyone over 40, men too, with declining testosterone. We know that zinc boosts testosterone, for instance. So I go to my track meets with my cooked steak and in my little cooler bag, and I'm notorious for being on the field before my 400 meters eating steak.
That's
and
awesome.
People are like, what are you doing?
Like, what is she?
You're running the 400, you're gonna throw up. So the 400 usually makes you so lactic you feel like you're going to throw up, and often people do throw up. But why don't I throw up? Well, I'm not eating carbohydrates, and carbohydrates, it's directly linked to increased lactic acid. So I'm eating the high protein steak instead, and it's got things like carnosine that's buffering the lactic acid. And the carnosine in beef is 85% more bioavailable than in a supplement. And it starts boosting in your blood 30 minutes after you consume beef. This is working so well for not only me, but my Olympians who are training, maybe at the Olympic Training Center or something. They have a different training, and it's all carbohydrates. It's all sugar. And sure, maybe you can sustain some athletic performance at that level, but by changing them to be what I call steak adapted, they thrive. They put on more muscle mass, they lean out, and they have all this energy that's sustained throughout the track meet.
I love that.
Yeah, not just, and then they get the burst, the creatine for the burst phase, the ATP phase. So a lot of people think, okay, well, keto or high protein, maybe that's fine for endurance, but because the fat burning for a long period of time, but not for sprinting or not for power sports. Well, the science is starting to catch up that
Totally.
In fact, you can be a power athlete and you can access that ATP through high protein, high fat. It turns out that the glycogens actually tends to be spared and a little bit more when you become steak or high protein adapted. And then I also, I have that lactic acid buffer for the end of my race in the 400. I'm in the endurance phase, and the lactic zone is really kicking in. And I tend to be very strong on my finish, not only through learning good form, but also because of this choice of food that I'm eating.
You're producing less lactic acid. That's what you're speculating, because you're not feeding that so-called glycolysis pathway?
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely. And the science backs that up if you really get into the mechanics of it. You can get to a great performance in your 20s through carbohydrates, but if you're pounding Powerade or Gatorade that you can maybe get away with it. But what I look for and what I work with my clients is, okay, I want you to have a great performance, and I want you to not have Alzheimer's when you're older.